The night sky above Earth shimmered with an eerie glow as the transmission hijacked every screen, every device, and every communication channel across the planet. In the middle of Times Square, billboards flickered and reset, now showing the same grotesque image. An alien face with sunken, insect-like eyes, a sickly blue-green complexion, and a sneer that dripped with self-importance. The figure straightened in what appeared to be an elaborate, high-backed throne of twisted metal and glowing green circuitry. His voice was a guttural snarl, layered with a translator's cold, mechanical precision. "People of Earth," the voice boomed, causing coffee shop patrons to pause mid-sip, construction workers to freeze mid-weld, and gamers to drop their controllers. "I am Emperor Xylem the Ruthless, supreme ruler of the Galactic Dominion, bringer of cosmic order, and master of the 8 warring sectors." A few college students, huddled in a dorm room, exchanged glances. "Why do they always have like 15 titles?" one muttered. Xylem continued, utterly indifferent to the stunned faces staring back at him across the planet. "Your species has long been an enigma to the Galactic Council. We have studied your primitive wars, your chaotic politics, your baffling obsession with gelatinous food. And yet, despite your technological backwardness, you have proven tenacious." His lips curled, as though the word itself was distasteful. "But our scholars have determined that your civilization is doomed by a fundamental biological flaw, the presence of your female population." Gasps rippled through newsrooms, homes, and command centers alike. "Women," Xylem declared, his voice thick with disdain, "are an unnecessary complication, a biological redundancy. Our simulations conclude that your species would thrive under a singular, controlled gender. And so, in the interest of galactic stability, the eradication of all female life on Earth shall commence immediately." A silence stretched across the planet, sharp, terrible, and brimming with disbelief. Then came the chaos. Newscasters fumbled to make sense of what they had just heard. Riotous shouting filled war rooms. Social media ignited with a fury that no alien monarch had likely ever witnessed before. But at a high-security military compound buried deep beneath the Nevada desert, one woman calmly set her half-eaten slice of pizza back into its box. General Molly Connors exhaled, took a long sip from her can of Mountain Dew, and let the words settle. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she grabbed the nearest remote and shut off the giant monitor in front of her. A beat of silence. Then she muttered, "Well, that's going to be a problem." The war room around her erupted into motion. Officers shouted into headsets, analysts pounded away at keyboards, and somewhere, a printer decided now was the perfect time to jam. The president's face appeared on a private monitor, pale and furious. "General Connors, tell me you have a plan." Molly leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "I do," she said. "Step 1. Find where this overgrown slug is hiding. Step 2. Make sure he never delivers another monologue again." The president hesitated. "Are you suggesting an attack? We don't even know what kind of forces he has." Molly smirked. "What, you want to sit around and negotiate with an alien who just announced a gender genocide like he's ordering takeout?" She leaned forward, voice sharpening. "We hit first. We hit hard. And we make sure the only thing left of Xylem is a cautionary tale in an alien history book." The president rubbed his temples. "Do we even have the capability to—" "Already working on it," Molly interrupted. "I need a ship. Something fast, something that can take a beating. And I need a crew. The best we've got." The president sighed. "You'll have it. But God help us all." Molly turned, already pulling up a personnel database. "Oh, trust me. We're going to help ourselves." She found Dr. Axel Strange first, holed up in his underground lab, surrounded by half-built drones, stacks of energy drinks, and a whiteboard covered in equations that looked like they had been scribbled by a caffeinated madman. Which, to be fair, they had. "Axel," Molly said, stepping over what she was fairly certain was a dismantled toaster with missiles attached. "You're coming with me." The scientist pushed up his goggles, squinting at her through a haze of soldering smoke. "Did I blow something up again?" "Not yet," she said. "But you will. Pack your gear." Axel grinned. revealing teeth stained by years of questionable beverage choices. I like where this is going. Next was Sergeant Brickhouse, 6'4", built like a bulldozer, and rumored to have once punched a tank. He was in the middle of deadlifting a Jeep when Molly arrived at the military training facility. "We're going to an alien planet," she said, arms crossed. Brickhouse set the Jeep down like it was a particularly heavy grocery bag. "We shooting something?" "Absolutely. I'm in." Finally, Molly tracked down her pilot. Captain Becky Bex Johnson was in a flight simulator, music blasting through her helmet speakers as she maneuvered a virtual fighter jet through an asteroid belt. When Molly cut the power, Bex pulled off her helmet, scowling. Rude. Molly tossed a file onto the console. "We're stealing a ship and taking the fight to Xylem." Bex flipped through the dossier. "High risk, borderline suicidal, guaranteed property damage." "Pretty much." Bex grinned. "When do we leave?" The hangar bay hummed with energy as Molly and her team strode toward their stolen ship, a battered prototype warship dubbed the Last Karen. Molly had handpicked it for its speed, resilience, and, most importantly, its advanced weaponry. If they were going to storm an alien emperor's palace, they were going to do it with style. Axel ran a diagnostic check, muttering, "This thing's running software older than my grandma's VCR, but I think I can make it purr." Brickhouse loaded up an arsenal that would have made an action movie jealous. Beck spun into the pilot's chair. "Ladies and gentlemen, your captain has arrived. Please fasten your seatbelts, and in case of emergency, scream loudly." Molly took a deep breath, looking over her crew. "This is a one-way trip," she said. "We go in, we kill the bastard, and we get out. No second chances." Brickhouse cracked his knuckles. "One is all I need." Axel grinned. "Time to make science illegal." Bex flicked a switch. "All right, kids. Let's go commit intergalactic war crimes." The ship roared to life, engines flaring. The hangar doors peeled open, revealing the endless void of space beyond. Molly took her seat, eyes locked forward. Xylem wanted a fight. Let's give him one. And with that, the last Karen blasted into the cosmos, carrying Earth's vengeance straight to the heart of the galactic dominion. The void of space stretched infinitely in every direction, speckled with the cold, distant glow of stars. The last Karen hurtled through the cosmos at breakneck speed, cutting through the blackness like an avenging blade. Inside the cockpit, Captain Becky Bex Johnson kept her hands steady on the controls, her mixtape of 90s rock blasting through the ship's speakers as Earth's most unlikely strike team prepared for the most dangerous infiltration mission in human history. Molly Connors sat beside her, eyes locked on the holographic display projecting their destination, a swirling mass of deep purple clouds orbiting a planet that pulsed with artificial lights. Xylem 5, the heart of the galactic dominion, where Emperor Xylem the Ruthless ruled with an iron tentacle. "So what's the plan?" Bex asked, adjusting the throttle as they closed in on the outer defensive perimeter. "Because I assume just knocking on the door and asking politely isn't going to work." Molly exhaled, folding her arms. "We go in under false credentials. Diplomatic escort." Axel's already cooked up a fake ID package. Dr. Axel Strange, hunched over the central console, didn't look up from his frantic typing. "Not just any ID package. We're now representatives of the Intergalactic Catering Union. The Last Karen is officially registered as a food transport vessel specializing in exotic Earth delicacies." Brickhouse, who had been methodically sharpening a combat knife on the edge of a steel crate, frowned. "So what, we're pretending to be space lunch ladies?" Axel grinned. "More like interstellar restaurateurs. And before you ask, yes, I've included a full menu." He flicked a switch, and the display lit up with an official-looking document labeled Galactic Culinary Association Approved Menu, Terran Division. It listed items such as bacon-wrapped Freedom Bites and cheese-based nutritional discs, aka pizza. Bex let out a laugh. "That might actually work. Who doesn't love pizza?" Molly rolled her eyes, but smirked. "You're all forgetting the important part. This gets us inside the city. Once we're in, we improvise." Brickhouse cracked his knuckles. "My kind of plan." Bex leaned forward, her fingers dancing across the console. We're entering their scanning range. Let's hope they're hungry. The ship jolted slightly as the deep, resonating voice of an automated security system came through the comms. Unidentified vessel. State your purpose and provide authorization codes. Axel pressed a button and spoke in an eerily official tone. This is the ICU transport vessel Last Karen, carrying special Earth-based provisions for the Emperor's grand banquet. Authorization code, Foxtrot Delta 97. Silence stretched for a moment, then the voice returned, slightly confused. Clarify, Earth-based provisions? Axel grinned, hitting a second switch. A low beep transmitted their menu to the security station. We have a wide selection of exclusive planetary delicacies. Emperor Xylem himself requested an advance shipment. Another pause. Then, unexpectedly, the voice softened. Is it true that Earth cuisine includes something called bacon? Axel gave Molly a smug glance. She pinched the bridge of her nose, but said nothing. Absolutely, Axel replied smoothly. Bacon burgers and something known as a Texas-style brisket. We come bearing the finest flavors in the cosmos. A different voice joined the comms, speaking rapidly in an alien dialect. Then the security officer returned, sounding almost eager. You are cleared for landing. Proceed to docking bay 12. The comms cut out. Bex snorted. Are you telling me we just bypassed an Imperial security checkpoint with the promise of barbecue? Axel shrugged. You'd be amazed what people will do for good food. The Last Karen descended through the thick, turbulent atmosphere of Xylem 5. The swirling purple clouds parted to reveal the sprawling capital city below, a vast network of glowing spires, labyrinthine streets, and shimmering transport lanes that wove between colossal buildings. The architecture was cold and oppressive, but the sheer size of it was awe-inspiring. They touched down in docking bay 12 with a mechanical hiss. Outside the viewport, squads of gray-skinned, multi-limbed Silomian workers bustled about, unloading cargo from other incoming vessels. A group of armed guards waited at the entrance, their insectoid faces unreadable behind their mirrored visors. Molly adjusted the high-collared diplomatic uniform she had thrown over her combat gear. All right, act natural. We're here to deliver food, not start a war, yet. Brickhouse, wearing an apron over his body armor, grumbled. If someone asks me to actually cook, we're doomed. They filed down the ship's ramp, rolling out a cargo crate marked Special Culinary Delivery. Handle with care. It wasn't full of food, it was full of high-grade explosives and weaponry. One of the guards stepped forward, his 3 yellow eyes scanning them. You are the food transport? Axel stepped up, flashing a confident grin. That's us. Where can we set up? The guard hesitated. His Supreme Eminence does not typically partake in foreign cuisine. However, due to curiosity, you will be granted limited access to the palace kitchens. Your presence will be supervised. Molly exchanged a glance with Bex. That was better than they had hoped. They needed to get inside the palace. This was their opening. Understood, Molly said smoothly. Lead the way. The guards escorted them through the towering corridors of the palace, each hallway more ostentatious than the last. The walls shimmered with an eerie, iridescent glow, lined with grand murals depicting Xylem's many conquests. A few passing officials eyed them suspiciously, but the guards kept them moving. They were led into a cavernous kitchen where strange, pulsating ingredients floated in vats of bubbling liquids. Silomian chefs worked methodically, their many arms chopping, stirring, and arranging dishes with almost mechanical precision. One of the guards motioned toward a preparation station. You may set up here. Molly gave a polite nod, even as her mind raced. They had to move fast. Every second wasted was a second closer to discovery. Axel wasted no time unloading the crate, discreetly passing Molly and Brickhouse concealed weapons under the guise of retrieving cooking supplies. Bex positioned herself near a panel of control switches, her fingers itching to disable security measures. Then, the doors at the far end of the kitchen slid open, and a new figure entered. He was tall, unlike the other Silomians. His frame was draped in a flowing robe of black and gold, his exoskeletal features sharp and severe. The palace staff froze as he moved through the room with deliberate steps. Molly tensed. This had to be one of Xylem's high-ranking officers. The figure stopped a few feet away, his dark gaze sweeping over them. "The human food suppliers," he said, voice dripping with skepticism. "I am Lord Rex, Grand Minister of Culinary Affairs." Axel muttered, "This dude has an entire ministry for food?" Molly elbowed him before stepping forward. "We are honored to provide a taste of Earth's finest." Rex sneered. "You will prepare a sample. If your food is deemed suitable, it will be presented before the Emperor." Brickhouse groaned. "We're really doing this?" Molly grabbed a slab of protein from a nearby counter. "We're really doing this?" As Axel fumbled with what looked like a pan, but hummed like a reactor core, Molly worked quickly, blending a mix of spices into the sizzling meat. She could feel Rex's gaze burning into her. The Grand Minister folded his arms. "Your species is reckless. Undisciplined. You think you can alter the natural order of things." Molly didn't flinch. "We don't think. We know." Rex exhaled sharply. "Your arrogance will be your downfall." Molly flipped the steak onto a plate and handed it to him. "Try me." Rex hesitated, then took a careful bite. For a moment, the room was silent. Then his mandibles twitched. His gaze darkened. Molly leaned forward. "Tastes good, doesn't it?" Rex dropped the plate, glaring. "Guards. Seize them." The ruse was up. Brickhouse grabbed a cleaver and sent it flying into the chest of the nearest guard. Axel yanked a hidden pistol from his apron, sending a plasma shot through a control panel. Sparks erupted. Bex flipped a switch, and every kitchen appliance went haywire. Flames, smoke, and screaming Xylemians filled the room. Molly grabbed her rifle. Time for the real fun. The infiltration had officially become an all-out assault. The palace corridors erupted into chaos. Alarms wailed through the metallic halls, their high-pitched shrieks reverberating off the walls like the dying cries of a malfunctioning robot. Guards flooded in from every direction, their sleek, insectoid armor glinting under the flickering crimson emergency lights. Molly Connors ducked behind an overturned banquet table, just as a plasma bolt seared through the air where her head had been a second before. "Brickhouse, suppressing fire," she barked. Sergeant Brickhouse, now fully free of his ridiculous apron disguise, grinned as he hoisted his weapon. With pleasure. He opened up with his modified pulse rifle, each shot sending a concussive blast that hurled enemy soldiers backward. The Xylemian guards were tough, but they weren't built for this kind of close-quarters brawl. Molly counted 4 down before she surged forward, using the distraction to close the gap. Bex was already at work, jabbing at a control panel with an improvised hacking device Axel had thrown together from the palace kitchen's various smart appliances. "I need another minute to get us a clear path to the throne room," she shouted over the gunfire. "We don't have a minute." Axel yelled back, his normally easygoing demeanor cracked under pressure. He had switched from scientist to soldier in the span of heartbeats, his energy pistol discharging rapid, precise shots. One Xylemian lunged for him, mandible snapping, only to be met with a brutal shot to the chest. "Okay," he panted, stepping over the fallen body. "That was closer than I'd like." Molly gritted her teeth. They were in too deep now. The only way forward was through. With a sudden hiss, the panel Bex had been working on beeped, flashing green. "Got it," she cheered. "Emergency security override. We've got a direct path to the throne room. But fair warning, it's only a matter of time before they lock us out again." "Then let's not waste it," Molly said, already sprinting toward the opening metal doors. The team surged forward, pushing through the last defensive line. They moved like a well-oiled machine, Axel covering the flanks with pinpoint shots, Brickhouse charging ahead like a battering ram, Bex watching their backs with deadly efficiency. And Molly kept her eyes forward, laser-focused on the goal. They reached the final blast doors, massive and imposing, marked with intricate alien script that pulsed with an ominous glow. 2 Xylemian elite guards stood at attention, their armor thicker, their weapons heavier. These weren't the low-ranking foot soldiers they had mowed through before. These were Xylem's personal enforcers. One of the guards hissed, "No further." Molly leveled her weapon. "That's adorable." The room exploded into motion. One of the guards lunged at her, moving faster than something that big had any right to. Molly ducked at the last second, her combat knife flashing as she drove it into the alien's exposed side. It screeched, its multiple arms flailing as it collapsed. Brickhouse squared off against the second guard, catching a blow to the chest that actually made him stagger. "Finally," he grunted, wiping blood from his lip. "A real fight." The alien went for a follow-up strike, but Brickhouse was already moving. He grabbed the Xylomian's arm mid-swing, twisted, and with a brutal snap, tore it clean off. The guard howled in agony. Brickhouse smirked. "I'm keeping this," he declared, tossing the severed limb over his shoulder before finishing the creature with a single shot to the head. Bex, panting, moved to the control panel. "I'm getting real tired of doors," she muttered, slapping a charge against the mechanism. The blast rocked the corridor, and with a metallic groan, the doors to the throne room slid open. The chamber inside was cavernous. Dark metallic walls pulsed with eerie bioluminescent veins, casting ghostly shadows across the throne that loomed at the center of the room. And there, seated in grotesque majesty, was Emperor Xylem. He was even more monstrous in person. His elongated form was coiled like some great serpent, his many limbs folded over themselves in a throne made of what looked like fused bone and metal. His sickly green eyes glowed with contempt as he regarded the intruders. "So," Xylem drawled, his voice dripping with disdain, "the vermin have scurried into the den of the predator." Molly took a slow step forward, weapon raised. "That's funny," she said. "I was thinking the exact same thing." Xylem's mandibles clicked. "Your resistance is foolish. You cannot stop what is inevitable." Brickhouse cracked his knuckles. "Inevitable? Man, you sound like every two-bit villain I've ever punched in the face." Axel adjusted his glasses. He's also got the classic monologuing instead of shooting flaw. Real textbook stuff. Xylem narrowed his eyes. With a flick of his wrist, the walls of the throne room shimmered, revealing automated turrets emerging from hidden panels. Molly swore. "Move." The first salvo came screaming toward them. The team scattered, diving behind cover as plasma rounds melted the ground where they had stood. Bex rolled, coming up behind a support pillar, and fired off a shot that took out one of the turrets in a small explosion. Axel ducked low, pulling out a small device. "I can overload the system, but I need 30 seconds. Buy him time." Molly commanded. Brickhouse, never one for subtlety, charged forward, plasma fire ricocheting off his armored vest. He reached the base of the throne, lifted a piece of destroyed turret debris, and hurled it at Xylem. The Emperor barely moved, the object stopping mid-air before it reached him. "A crude attempt," Xylem sneered. "You are insects." Molly didn't stop moving. She darted toward the right, using the chaos to close the distance. The moment Xylem's attention shifted, she launched herself onto the throne. He reacted, lashing out with a monstrous limb, but she twisted mid-air, landing on his arm and using the momentum to drive her combat knife deep into the sinewy joint. Xylem let out an unearthly screech. His arm spasmed violently, throwing her off, but she landed in a crouch, weapon still raised. "You wound me," Xylem hissed, holding his injured limb. "You think yourself strong?" "I don't think," Molly said, breathing hard. "I just win." Axel's device let out a high-pitched beep. "Done," he shouted. The throne room's power grid overloaded. Every turret, every shield, every security measure shut down at once. The glow of the walls flickered and died, plunging the room into momentary darkness. Molly didn't hesitate. She surged forward. Xylem tried to rise, but Brickhouse was already on him, grabbing one of his flailing limbs and wrenching it backward with a sickening snap. Bex emptied her weapon into his torso, blue plasma searing through flesh. Molly closed the gap, driving the barrel of her pistol beneath his chin. "You," Xylem gasped, gurgling on his own thick, dark blood. "You insignificant." She pulled the trigger. The blast tore through his skull, silencing him mid-sentence. His body convulsed, his many limbs twitching, before slumping back into his grotesque throne. Silence. Molly exhaled. The weight of it all settled onto her shoulders. It was over. Brickhouse nudged Silem's corpse with his boot. So much for being inevitable. Axel adjusted his glasses. The good news is the Emperor is dead. The bad news is we're still on an enemy planet. Bex grinned, breathless but triumphant. Then I guess we'd better make our exit. Molly reloaded her weapon. Agreed. Let's burn this place to the ground on our way out. With one last look at the fallen Emperor, she turned and led her team out of the throne room. The corpse of Emperor Silem still twitched in his grotesque throne as Molly Connors turned away, heart pounding. His blood, thicker and blacker than oil, dripped down the ornate structure, pooling beneath his slumped form. The stench of burned flesh and ozone filled the air, but there was no time to savor the victory. Outside the palace walls, alarms howled. The entire capital would know by now. Bex tapped her earpiece, scanning the palace's security grid through her portable hacking device. Bad news, she muttered. Every remaining Silomian soldier on this rock is converging on our position. Axel groaned. Right. Because nothing can ever be easy. Brickhouse cracked his knuckles, stepping away from Silem's body with a satisfied smirk. Bring him. I'm just getting warmed up. Molly shook her head. No time for a last stand. We need to get back to the last Karen before they lock down the spaceport. Bex pulled up a glowing map on her wrist screen. There's a shortcut through the lower palace corridors. Gets us to the docking bay in half the time, assuming we don't run into. A tremor rocked the palace, cutting her off. A deep guttural roar echoed through the halls, making the very floor vibrate. Molly's gut clenched. Whatever that was, it wasn't normal. Axel winced. I really don't like that sound. Bex typed furiously. I just pulled up heat signatures. Something's moving beneath us. Something big. Brickhouse's smirk widened. Finally, a real fight. Molly ignored him. We don't fight unless we have to. Move. The team sprinted down the corridors, weaving through the crumbling, smoke-filled palace. The power fluctuations from Axel's overload had thrown the building into chaos. Lights flickered wildly. Entire sections of the walls sparked with raw energy, and automated defense systems twitched erratically, unsure whether to engage or shut down entirely. A blast door groaned in protest as Bex overrode the lock, giving them a clear shot to the lower levels. The air was damp and filled with the acrid scent of coolant leaks. Then the walls shook. A massive clawed hand, if it could be called that, punched through the steel plating, sending shards flying. Molly barely had time to register the grotesque, biomechanical horror pulling itself through the rupture. 8 limbs, plated in some grotesque mix of metal and flesh, scraped against the walls. Its elongated skull bore a twisted resemblance to Silem, but its glowing red eyes were filled with something primal, something mindless. Axel swore under his breath. Oh, fantastic. A fail-safe. He backed up his consciousness into a war beast. The creature bellowed, a horrific, rattling noise that sent vibrations through Molly's bones. Its movements were wrong, jerky, and unstable, as if its own body hadn't caught up with its newly awakened consciousness. Bex took a cautious step back. How do we kill it? Brickhouse grinned, leveling his plasma launcher. Same way we killed him the first time. He fired. The blast hit the creature's chest, sending a ripple of molten metal and scorched flesh spiraling across the chamber. It staggered, but did not fall. Instead, it charged. Molly shoved Axel out of the way as the monster's grotesque form slammed into the wall, where he had just been standing. The impact shattered metal, sending debris crashing down. We don't have time for this, she shouted. Bex, is there another way out? Yeah, but it's past the giant alien demon, so, not ideal. Molly gritted her teeth. We make a path. Brickhouse grabbed a fallen steel beam and, within human strength, swung it like a club. The force of the impact dented the creature's skull, but it didn't slow. Instead, it grabbed Brickhouse and threw him across the room. Axel scrambled to a fallen weapons cache, yanking free a pulse grenade. Everyone get down, he yelled, tossing it directly into the creature's open, shrieking maw. The explosion sent a shock wave through the room, blasting the thing backward in a twisted heap of smoking flesh. It convulsed, sputtering a horrid, gurgling screech, but it was down. Molly helped Brickhouse to his feet as Bex rushed past, already hacking the next-door panel. Come on, before it figures out how to regenerate. They pushed through the final security checkpoint, emerging into the open space of the docking bay. The last Karen sat waiting, her patched-together hull gleaming under the artificial lights. Dozens of enemy soldiers were already in position, weapons raised. A synthesized voice echoed through the chamber. "You will not leave this place alive." Molly recognized the voice. Xylem's command AI, the ghost of his will, still clinging to life through his army. Bex grabbed her earpiece. AI defenses coming online. Shields activating in 10 seconds. If we're not airborne before then, we're stuck. Molly made her decision. Brickhouse, suppressing fire. Axel, get that ship running. Brickhouse was already moving, his massive frame turning into a human battering ram as he laid into the nearest soldiers, scattering them like bowling pins. Axel vaulted up the ship's loading ramp, frantically flipping switches. Spooling engines. "We've got about 30 seconds before we could take off." Bex ducked behind a cargo crate, picking off enemies with precision shots. "Make it 20. Molly fought her way up the ramp, firing into the chaos. A plasma bolt grazed her shoulder, searing through her armor. She grunted, pushing forward. The enemy forces regrouped, their weapons locking onto the ship. "Brace!" Axel yelled. The last Karen's thrusters roared to life, incinerating the nearest Silomian troops in a wave of fire. The ship lurched upward, engines burning at full capacity. Bex yanked the controls. Come on, come on." The ship blasted through the docking bay doors, shattering glass and steel as it punched into open air. Behind them, the palace erupted into a chain of violent explosions. The overload Axel had triggered in the security systems had finally reached the main reactor. Xylem 5 skies burned as the heart of the Dominion crumbled. Molly collapsed into the co-pilot seat, panting. "Get us out of here." Bex didn't need to be told twice. She punched the ship into maximum velocity, sending them hurtling toward hyperspace. The AI's last, static-filled words crackled over the comms. "This is not over." Then the palace was gone, and with it, the reign of Emperor Xylem. For a long moment, the crew sat in silence, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Then Axel let out a long breath and leaned back against the hull. "Well, that was absolutely horrifying." Brickhouse chuckled, inspecting a fresh bruise. "Best fight I've had in years." Molly smirked despite herself. "We did it." Bex exhaled, her fingers still tight on the controls. "We really did." They had won. The galaxy would wake up tomorrow to a universe without Xylem's tyranny. His empire would collapse under its own weight, fractured by infighting. And Earth had sent a message. Molly looked around at her crew. This unlikely, dysfunctional band of misfits who had defied an empire. A smile tugged at her lips. "All right," she said, stretching. "Who wants to break the news to the president?"